Looking at the user navigation, we can filter on the names of the users, we can filter on the email, we can also define what types of information we want to display. So as an example, if you only wanted to look at a certain type of role on the tenant, maybe you only wanted to look at agents, you can very quickly navigate and define who's going to be viewed within this interface. We can also define what columns are going to be available. So in this case, we have name and email. We may also want to look at the current agent status, so we can certainly add them, that column to that view. Once I selected individual user, we can go ahead and start the configuration. So if we select Steve Morgan as an example, once we click on the user itself, it opens the configuration to the right-hand side. The first part is actually defining what type of role this user is going to have. So in this case, we could define maybe a custom role or the default roles, which are administrator, supervisor, and agent. So each tenant can have as many custom roles as so desired. We also can define the different talk paths. So we look at extensions. In this case, we may want to provide maybe a PSTN dial. So maybe this would be that user's cell phone. So maybe they want to work remotely from time to time, so we can enable that cell phone number. And once again, we can use any dialable number on the planet to ring an agent to the conversation. And then the converse part of that is also the WebRTC option. So if we want to allow agents to actually receive interactions via the web browser, which eliminates the requirement of having a cell phone or a desk phone, the benefit of that global routing is actually being able to hard code the region. So if we had users that were global, we knew agents were going to be in Japan. We know that typically Japanese customers dial Japanese phone number that ring a Japanese agent. We could actually hard code that call so it never left the island of Japan. By default, we use what's called global low latency. So this defines the best global path to ensure the highest call quality of that WebRTC call. Moving on down the configuration. This is where we can see the actual skills associated to this user. We can also see their proficiency. We can also increase or decrease their proficiency as well. So if Steve here was getting better at email, we could go ahead and increase his proficiency and then save that new proficiency setting. Also the concept of groups. So we use the combination of skills-based routing and group routing to define our queue escalation, which we'll cover a little bit later on in the flow design. This allows us to initially look for the best skilled agent that maybe overflows into a different type of skill or event later on down the path. We can also define presence reasons. This allows us to associate multiple presence reasons to a user. The use case here is you may have users that work across the sales department as well as support department, and they may have different states or busy states that they need to go into that represent different types of interactions or post-call work that they're doing. So we can actually assign multiple presence reasons to an individual user. We then move into the capacity rules. This is where we can define maybe those super agents. They can truly multitask across multiple agents, or we can actually scale it down, maybe a new agent capacity rule where they can only do one thing at a time. So we can make it as flexible or as restrictive as needed. Also, those transfer lists, these are those custom transfer lists so that agents or users can do a single click to transfer either to an internal queue or user or an external resource via PSTN or SIP routing. We can also associate or define which messaging templates this user would have assigned to their profile. So in this case, if I wanted to add in the website referral template for this user, I can very quickly go ahead and add that template to their profile. Looking at the configurations, so if we work down the column, so this is where we would create a user. Creating a user is very, very simple. We simply put in an email address, define what their role is going to be on the platform. And once again, this is very customizable. By default, administrator, supervisor, and agent. But maybe we wanted to add in just an agent to the tenant. This will prohibit any access to the back-end administration or reporting. So we can define those variables there. We can also define if we want to invite this person immediately. When they're invited, they would actually receive an email. Once they open that email, there's a link that they can click on to set their password. We can also not invite them now. So maybe I have multiple users starting on Monday, and I want to create their user profile prior to Monday, and I actually don't want to send those email invites until Monday. I can hold off on the invite.